Your thoughts are running way ahead of you. And you're trying to catch up to them. Obediently following in their trail. So everything then is deemed to be in their control. Your thoughts, that is. Because this has been a pattern, a habit, of existing, you think that this is normal. You think that this is how it's supposed to be. This is life. This is how things are. And there's nothing you can do about it. But that's not the case. The mind, if you let it be on its own, dictated by whatever stimulation comes in, including from its own thought reserves, as in memories, which basically the five senses and what they pick up, plus the mind itself and the functioning of it, the constant manufacturer of ideas, impressions that turn into some form of an expression. Keep this thing churning. Keep the heart active. Keep the mind deluded. And keep you unsettled. And then you turn around to look at the world and to try to find, and there's always going to be something in the world that will be the substrate, almost. The thing where the agitation that you were experiencing falls upon as its raison d'être, like the purpose, the reason for being. So now the mind is on one end, and the object outside of you is the other end. Meanwhile, who's playing on this string? If this was a string of a guitar. The deluded mind that keeps flicking away on this string, strumming away. Keeping that string of agitated mind, of always being at the edge of your seat mind, perpetually moving, agitated, unsettled. So long as that is the case, there's not going to be any nibbana taking place. There's not going to be even a tasting of nibbana. There's not going to be any true tranquility. Excuse me. There's not going to be any sense of equanimity to be enjoyed, to be sensed even. Why? Because you're too weighed down by your thoughts. Your thoughts are weighing you down. You're giving too much attention to them. Instead of treating them the way they should be treated, which is, well, they're just happening. They're not you. Just like your emotions, they're not you. Just like your body, it's not yours. The sensations you feel on your skin, the itching, the temperature fluctuations, the headaches, the heart palpitations, or the aches and pains, or the goosebump that you feel, the goose flush that happens because you saw something or you were reminded of something, and you're moved. You're not moved. Things are just happening because it's a dynamic process. It's a systemic reality. Causes and conditions compounding at the right time, they will manifest in a certain way. Now, your attitude towards that manifestation can go in either of three ways, not just two, three. Either you will love it or hate it, or just be completely bland, disinterested, indifferent to it. And this is basically the arena of human experiencing. This is what we justify as the norm, as the way things are. But that's only on the superficial level. If that's where we stop, that's where we exist, that's where we basically stay buoyant and live, accepting that status quo, then it's already a fact where we're defeated. There is no liberation, there is no freedom. Because, as I was saying, beings are slaves. We are slaves to our thoughts. For that reason, we strive to calm the mind, understand the rising and disappearing of sensations, stimulations to the sensory perceptions, but not while holding on to these two positions, one for ourselves and one granting it to some phenomenon out there, either in the world or in the body, in the memories. Why though? Why are we giving up? Because the agitation is gone. That's the intention, to make the agitated state of the mind disappear. That's the whole point. If we have a body, then we will have sensations. If you don't have a body, you won't have that sensation. Imagine, instead of having this body that you inhabit, that you have, with skin, organs, tissues, organ systems, skeletal system, etc., etc. Imagine you didn't have any of those except for the skeleton, the bones. Not even the cartilage between the bones, the joints, just the bones. Would these sensations matter? Would these memories that you're having matter? The thoughts that are and have been weighing you down, do they matter? The worries and concerns you have before or during or after you've lived your day, for that day, Would they matter to a skeleton? They would not. And this is what we understand when Lord Buddha speaks about non-self. What he's referring to is the non-identification anymore to a self, a substantial self being there with clear dimensions, separate from conditionality, separate from causes, separate from other factors upon which in reality it is completely dependent. Because the agitation that you experience happens because of something that was the result of many things coming together. And that's why you see the ripple on the surface of the lake. And then it goes away. But we hold on to the memory of that ripple. Maximize it. Make it into something grandiose, something huge, something that shakes up your entire life for that moment. There you go. You just made that end point, one of those two end points. The other one is you, holding a position towards it. And so long as there's these two ends, you have a string in between, and craving, which has always been there in the background, sneakily running the whole show, keeps playing on that string, keeps agitating, vibrating, creating tension, release, tension, release, tension, release, tension, release, tension, release, agitating you constantly. And then what happens? Well, the calmness or tranquility that you wanted to have, the peace that you wanted to have is gone. You can't have them both. So long as we have stories that we want to defend, protect ourselves against, be occupied by, keeps us busy basically, there's going to be these colorations, these perpetually active movements, tremors in the heart, in the mind. And if you were looking into a bowl full of water to try to see the bottom of it, let's say there's some writing in this bowl on the inside of it, underneath this layer of water, because of the fluctuation in the water, let's say there's wind or somebody came and shook this bowl, the water in it, now you can't see because it's too turbulent. Why? Because there was movement. And movement is what we are addicted to. We complain about thoughts, we complain about worries, this and that. Well, yeah, worries come because of, it's a state of being because of the tumultuous activity of the mind, of the heart, because of thoughts, instigated by the desire for something and the desire for something else not to occur. That chaotic state, we have preferences towards some versus others. If it's a joyful, delightful, colorful experience that the mind or the heart is having, again, instigated by craving, put into motion because of thoughts, we have a liking to that. Well, what is the difference then between one and the other? Well, one was pleasant, the other one is pleasant, the other one it was not. We didn't like it. But in both cases, the heart, the mind is agitated. There is no release. You're stuck. You never actually left the building. You're stuck. The heart is a slave to the dictates of the thoughts that are pulling you, weighing you down. So we meditate to slow things down to a point where we are able to detect layer by layer, before the fluctuating thoughts kick in to gear. We go layer by layer, deeper and deeper and deeper to the actual mechanism of how thoughts function, what triggers them. That's where we get to see craving, the longing for things to be coming alive, to get rid of boredom, to add certain ingredients to the living experience. And then you start seeing things for what they truly are, minus the stimulations, minus the mind being active, because the mind is what is going to be liberated, not by thoughts. Thoughts will never liberate you. Nibbana is not the result of you having thoughts. Certain thoughts over other kinds of thoughts. That's not Nibbana. Because that would mean it's simply conditioned. But Nibbana is not conditioned. True awakening, as taught in this Dhamma and discipline of the Buddha, in this tradition, is not the result of imagination, is not the result of some thinking, certain types of thoughts, or states that you could conjure up. That's not this path, that's something else entirely. And we're not interested in that. Why? Because they all keep that agitation going. So your objective is to constantly go back to that state of equanimity, quietude, tranquility, where there isn't that harping away, flicking on that string between an object and a subject, trying to create some type of interesting activity, intriguing state of affairs for the mind to be engaged in. So long as that is happening, you are in slavery. Slavery to the mind, your mind, your thoughts, even though they're not yours, because you take them as such. You believe that that's who you are. And that's what happens when a person has been in slavery. If you imprison a person for long enough of a time, decades after being there, even when the doors are blasted open or they release that prisoner from prison, from the jail, there is nothing else that that person would be identified by. So they will remain there because that is what they consider to be home. It's quite convoluted. And that is a situation where the slave will remain a slave. And that's what we have been. Until the Buddha showed up, until he understood what's been happening. The suffering is real. Before anything else, the suffering that is created in the mind is the worst, because that is the one that's responsible for everything else. Everything else. So we use the mind to become free from the mind. That's the path of wisdom. That's the path of awakening. And no one can do that for us. Each of us must do this for ourselves.